What's up, fam? It's Zoe. How are you guys doing? I just had a thought, and I wanted to share it with you guys. It's somewhat in the metaphysical realm. In fact, it's specifically about metaphysics, and I want to explain a little bit about what that is. I call myself a metaphysician. I'm part scientist because I like logic and I like things that make sense. But I'm also part spiritualist. Like, I know there's things that we don't understand. Humans have a long history of being wrong about stuff, but being very, very convicted to their belief. I'm sure at some point somebody had a fight over who was in charge, Zeus or Apollo, right? And back then, that was the truth. That was, like, they call it the tonal of the time, meaning the overall, accepted belief back in Greek, ancient Greece, their mythology was their religion, right? So people were so convicted to this idea that people probably fought wars over it. I don't know, just like they do now. Okay, so with that being said, we oftentimes as a species attach ourselves to ideas too strongly. So there has to be a balance between, faith and logic. And that's where metaphysics is. Metaphysics is, to me, like part philosophy, part, scientific process, and part, just, I don't know, intuition. We'll call it that. Okay? Now, let's talk about the word metaphysics, okay? So physics is the mathematical area, or science, if you will, scientific, what's the word? Let's call it a subject, or let's call it a department, okay, of science. Physics explains what happens in the physical world when objects interact with each other. Like, physics can explain why light is light and why it goes as fast as it does. Physics explains why when you throw a ball at the ground at 35 degrees, it bounces at 35 degrees. These are laws of physics. Physics explains what gravity is and why it exists, which they're still trying to figure out, really, but there's a lot of theories and so on. Okay, so physics has to do with things you can see and touch and interact with, okay? Meta is a word that means beyond. So beyond physics, metaphysics, right? Beyond what you can see and touch and taste and interact with. So why would anybody be interested in metaphysics? Well, you could argue that the people that discovered bacteria were metaphysicians before they were scientists. And how could you argue that? Because we didn't know at one point, it wasn't an accepted truth that bacteria was even real. We did not have the capability to understand for a very long stretch of history, human history, that a microorganism can exist, that something so small can live that you can't even see. Like 1,000 bacteria can fit on the tip of a pin, and I don't mean the head, I mean like the sharp end of a pin, right? That's how small they are. And then there's things that are even smaller than that, like atoms, okay? And so only because we started to understand a little bit about cause and effect, and people were getting infections and we didn't know why, so people started to come up with theories as to, like, well, why should we wash our hands before we do surgery on somebody, Well, maybe there's these little organisms we don't understand, or maybe dirt or something shouldn't be inside of a human body, right? So over time, through trial and error, did we start to understand that maybe there's something there that we don't see, okay? Now put a pin in that. Atoms. Atoms were also under the metaphysical realm, okay, until we could see them, right, with an electron microscope. And the theory of atoms, atomic theory, came about when they noticed that certain materials would expand and contract based on hot and cold. And so they had this idea that, well, maybe everything, is made up of these tiny, tiny particles that, again, we can't see, that respond to different types of physical phenomena. So until we could see bacteria under a microscope, and until we could see atoms under an electron microscope, these were in the metaphysical realm. They were in the invisible realm. And now that we can see them, now they're part of physics, okay? And they're part of biology. And there's a bunch of other examples like weather. We used to think that, you know, thunder was God bowling until we understood electricity and thunder and things of that nature. How electricity uses friction, well, causes friction through the air and creates a sound wave, okay? So with that being said, I'm not going to park next to these trash cans. With that being said, auras, okay? Reiki is metaphysical. Right now, the bioelectrical field around somebody, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, and whether it has tears in it, whether it has attachments to other people, or people have attachments to your aura, things of that nature, that's all metaphysical. Now, we're starting to understand auras and Reiki and energy healing and chi and things of that nature based on how our bodies are responding to external physical interaction. So what I can tell you is that the same kind of people have existed throughout history. And they're the people that say, I see what I believe and that's it. They denied that bacteria was real. They denied that atoms were real, and they're going to deny that auras are real, and that crystals can heal you, and that water can be affected through vibration. I'm not saying these people are wrong. What I'm saying is, if you have the ability, if you're a visionary and you have the ability to perceive something that others can't, like if you have a metaphysical ability, be ready to encounter these people. Be ready to embrace conflict and be okay with it. Because the people that taught us about the fact that lead was poisonous, it took the scientists that discovered that lead was poisonous, it took him 30 years to convince the world that lead was bad for us. While another scientist and the government and all the powers that be were trying to convince us that it wasn't. So be ready to like hold strong, like dig your heels in, because someday we're going to get goggles and we're going to be able to see people's auras. We're going to be able to see tears. We're going to be able to see chakras, and we're going to see that they're aligned or misaligned or spinning in the wrong direction, or they're clogged or they're open. We're going to see people's attachments to other people, other places and things. It will explain why there's still ghosts. It'll explain why there's karma. It'll explain why there are repeating lives, like why we come back, right? But until that happens, the mass consciousness is not going to accept that this is real. Just like they couldn't accept that atoms were real, and they couldn't accept that bacteria was real, and they couldn't accept that lead poisoned us. They had to be convinced, and they had to see it. And then even once they could see, it still took a very long time for it to spread into the mass consciousness. So I'm just like lucky that I have, as a Capricorn, I have conviction, and I was born with the ability to perceive and understand energy. And I didn't know why until I turned like 30 years old. And then once I understood that I had a job to do, that I had a mission. But until then, it was just like it was kind of like a burden almost to be able to see these attachments between people, see when people fight and see their aura turn black or something, or be able to like perceive spirits, things of that nature. That was all a big hassle for me. That was not cool. It wasn't a gift. I didn't share it with anybody, and I sure as heck didn't enjoy it. Once I had my awakening, I understood finally what that was all about. So it wasn't anything I wanted to believe. It was just something that I had, because just like people say, I'll see what I believe. It's like, well, what I see is not what everybody else sees, but I believe it because I see it. And it's not a matter of trying to fortify it through belief or trying to tell myself it's true. It's literally like, you saw a car accident, you didn't make it up, you saw it happen. It's like, I saw a little girl walk from one side of my bathroom to another. And then I went and looked in my bathroom and there was nobody there. Like, all had some unexplainable experience out there where it was either you saw a ghost or you saw a UFO or you had a dream about something that was going to happen and then it did. So we don't have to deny that any of this, like, it is true. We don't have to deny that it's true. It's hard to duplicate as far as if you're a scientist and you're trying to duplicate this. Yes, that's very difficult. To say that it's duplicatable is sometimes impossible. But to just blatantly say that it's 100% nonsense, like astrology is nonsense and crystals are nonsense and all that stuff, it's like, you don't have to believe it. But don't go out of your way to try to convince people who do understand it that they're crazy. Like, if you don't see it, then that's fine. That's just life. That's just your life path. But for other people that do, it's like, why go out of your way to attack those people? Is what I'm saying. It's like, understand that we have a history of being wrong, and we're very convinced that we're right as humans. We have a history of not being able to see, and then we have a history of convicting those who can see. Whoa, what just got blurry for no reason? Then we have 11:11. Bam. Then we have this history of attacking people who can see. And so I would just like to see a part in our history where people who can see, we should not feel like we're better than other people. And people who can't see and choose not to see, people who like choose ignorance, right? For whatever reason, maybe it's sanity, maybe it's ego, maybe it's some sort of superiority complex, maybe it's fear, whatever. But they shouldn't try to project their lack of vision on us. So what I want to see, I'm wearing my Teach Peace shirt, and I didn't know I was going to do this video today. What I want to see is mutual respect. For those who, which brings me to my favorite quote of all time. Leonardo da Vinci said, there's those who see once you show them, and those who do not see. So, and guess what? Guess who deserves respect? All of the above. Every one of us. We don't have to agree. We don't have to force ourselves to believe or disbelieve. We get to respect where we are and where other people are at. The whole point of being a higher consciousness being is not to make yourself better than other people. And if you're not into like higher consciousness thinking, then please choose laziness. You don't have to support us, those who are trying to expand their consciousness. You don't have to be in support. You don't have to be in opposition. Literally, you can choose to do nothing. And it would be better than attacking and trolling people on Facebook. So, teach peace, teach respect. If we're going to reach peace, we got to teach peace. Love you guys. Peace.